Now I'm going to bring in my guy, Ken McCusick, over from at Film Study. I've been on his show a few times. When I tell you this guy, he eats film for lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So I listened to an episode of his last night that talked about some of the changes that he would like to see coming out of the bye. And so let's bring him in and talk about some of those changes. Ken, thank you for joining me. How are you?
Life's good, Sarah. How about you?
Life is good. Life is good. Even though the Ravens are sitting here during bye week having to, have that bitter taste in their mouth for 2 weeks, maybe in some ways that could be good motivation to get the coaches in the lab, get players in the lab, and try to figure out what they can change to kind of make a December run heading into January. I really enjoyed your episode. I think it was called The Last Word. Is that what it was?
One last thing with Slava Cooperstein as my co-host.
Okay, one last thing. And so I just wanted to bring you on and kind of run through some of the things, the changes that you would like to see. Maybe it's best to let's start with defense, because one thing that I thought was very interesting was your guys' proposal of cornerbacks and trialing. So can we start on defense and maybe some things that you'd like to see changed in the secondary, even though they've already made a ton of changes?
Right. And I think this is a possibility of something that could change. I'm not saying I'm really advocating strongly for this, but the Ravens have not historically been a team that had their cornerbacks travel. What that means is having cornerbacks chase the best receiver with their best corner or even their second best corner. That is something I think this team could potentially change to if they wanted to. And I would use what is a kind of a common strategy with this is put your best cornerback, who's Humphrey, on the number 2 receiver, leave him on an island, and put Nate Wiggins chasing the best receiver, because Wiggins has all the physical tools to do it, and have him regularly have help from a safety over the top on Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, whoever it might be that they're facing.
Now, I don't hate that. I hate that because it just feels like so many times it's landed on Brandon Stevens. It's just like, let's pick apart and just keep going at him until he stops it. And obviously he's made tremendous, growth coming from where he's come from, but they've just put too much on his plate. And I like this. I really like this idea from you of Nate Wiggins traveling.
Yeah, one issue that goes with having the fixed corner positions, and you highlight this, is the other team chooses the matchup. So
right.
They're getting to decide. And you have reasons why you do that, because your corners may be better with one boundary. They may be better playing over one shoulder, catching the ball. That's certainly true of receivers. There may be dominant hand conditions, because knocking down a pass is a fine motor skill, so you want your hand in the right position. There are lots of reasons why you might want to do it that way, but there are also a lot of compromises you make to keep people on the same side.
Do you feel like Brandon Stevens can switch over to the other boundary?
Don't really know. He's played all over the place.
Oh, you said don't really know. I thought you said no. Okay.
No, I don't really know. No,
Okay.
I think the fact that they played him so long at right corner and haven't done any traveling is not necessarily indicative. And that may be his second choice, but it's Humphrey's first choice to play at left corner. I do think that if part of the change is having Brandon Stevens fill in, whether on an emergency or a regular basis at safety, to try and move Hamilton up front, that it becomes not the significant question is where Stevens wants to play. If he's playing 25, 30 snaps a game at right corner, then you can make changes.
Would you make any other changes along the secondary?
What they've done is good in terms of the safeties. I think that's clearly worked out. The big change that I would like to find another safety, and Desmond King might be that guy, a guy who can fill in on a half field back end basis and allow Hamilton to move up. I think that's what this defense is really missing. In the Philadelphia game, they faced a monstrous offensive line, really on both sides of the ball. They're much bigger and more physical lines.
Yeah.
And having Hamilton up at the line of scrimmage in big nickel would have been the perfect answer for 12. And they really didn't have it in that game.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's move to linebackers. I was slightly surprised when Roquan went down that they weren't able to use Simpson more, Trenton Simpson. But, again, he could be on a Patrick Queen trajectory, right, where it takes a little bit more time to get him to be an every down backer. But they were having Board and Trenton Simpson, even in this last game, change every series Do you like that move? I was kind of impressed with Board. Is there any changes you would make in the middle linebacker position? Or do you kind of like this rotation that they got going on?
Well, having this play out is probably healthy, but let's do a little background here and explain this. It is normal to have inside linebackers who are specialists by pass and run down, and
Right.
Board has had such a responsibility early in his career where he played on third down, for example, and he came in at the will spot, and even when they stayed with the nickel, they had a nickel that they liked better there, et cetera, et cetera. So that's not what this is. And when you see alternation by series, it's really a competition for playing time. It's you need to prove you're better than this guy in general on any of the three downs. And so it's very surprising to see this. Extremely surprising. It's not good that the Ravens are having to do this with a second-year, third-round player having to compete to win back his job against a sixth-year journeyman veteran or whatever Board is now. I think he's 6 years in the league.
Yeah.
So but I think in the sense that they should get good play, and they're getting some good play out of Board. I think the competition is probably healthy at this point, and hopefully it elevates Simpson's game.
Okay, let's move to the defensive line. Travis Jones has been an animal despite his hurt ankle. Him and Justin Madubuike together are phenomenal. They may have been playing a little too many snaps, but Michael Pierce, it looks like he's going to be back after the bye. How are you feeling about the defensive line going forward?
Right. So the latest Michael Pierce can be activated would be after the Giants game. That's when his 3-week window runs out. I expect them to be back. I'm highly bullish on the defensive line when Pierce is back. He's an enormous influence there. He would take some snaps off of Jones's plate, and they would still be able to have one or the other on the field for every single play. When he first came into the league, by the way, when Travis Jones, well, actually really more in his second year, I thought this is a great opportunity to get these guys together as a 1-3 combo. I think the Ravens much more need them as a combo who each has a running mate regularly they go with, and they alternate series that way or alternate sets of snaps in that way. It's very important to have one of them on the field all the time. Travis Jones, the absence of him has absolutely killed the pass rush in a lot of ways. They've gotten much less pressure, both in the 3 games that he missed all completely or partially, and also when he came back, they had difficulty with him being hurt and not getting as much pressure. And there are other reasons for that too. Obviously, they're without Kyle Van Noy this last week, but the Ravens' pass rush is driven from the interior. The Travis Jones ability to draw doubles, to command those double teams on the inside, and to beat them sometimes is exactly what drives the Ravens' pass rush. The Ravens have had this before with Trevor Pryce, with Pernell McPhee, with Sam Adams, going back historically, as being players who were very dominant on the inside, and the pass rush was built off of them. Haloti Ngata also falls into that category. And those are guys all didn't roll up big sack totals themselves, with the exception of Pryce. But they were guys who generated a lot of the one-on-one matchups for other players.
And finally, I guess I have 2 more questions on defense, but we'll try to move through them quickly. Offensive or outside linebacker against the Eagles, I was somewhat surprised. The Ravens had Tavius Robinson there much more than Odafe Owe. What did you think of that? And do you think it'll continue?
Well, the Odafe thing, I think they were really trying to conserve their best pass rusher that remains. And I think it might have been a kind of a natural reaction to that. The Tavius Robinson playing that many snaps, I was still very surprised by. I thought they could have gotten David Ojabo in the game more, but we really have a clear indication of where he is. And, you look at this, and he played 8 snaps on defense, 0 on special teams. Isaac played 24 on special teams, 0 as a pass rusher. And the couple weeks before, Ojabo was a healthy scratch, which tells me that they really like the combination of special teams and defense they get from Isaac more than they like Ajabo's pass rush only. So when he comes back, when Van Noy comes back, I would expect Owe to return to a more normal, 60%-ish percentage of snaps. The Ravens also were not able at any point in the game against Philadelphia to kind of have the Eagles in a game script where they were forced to pass, which was what they really wanted. What they really wanted was to do that funnel rush that they were using, basically 4-man rush, keep Hurts in the pocket, and force him to lose the game. Because he will do it. He will give you lots of chances in the end if you let him.
And then overall with Zach Orr, what kind of I don't know if is grade the right word. Like, how do you see the adjustments he's made? I mean, it was looking really bad for a minute. The last 2 games have been good. So what kind of grade do you give on Zach Orr? And do you see the fingerprints of Dean Pease?
Yeah, I definitely see the fingerprints of Dean Pease, and the biggest place you see that is the pass rush. I'll start with Orr.
Mhm.
I'm optimistic based on the last 3 games that he can help guide the Ravens through this. And frankly, I think the Ravens could have a very good defense. I think they have an average defense now, but I
Mhm.
think they could have a very good defense by
Oh,
playoff
okay.
time.
Give us hope, Ken.
Yeah,
Let's hear it. Well, why
I'm
do
going
you
to give
say
you hope.
that?
Well, the interior defensive line, the
Okay.
changes that have been made are now going to all come to fruition. I would not want to be the New York Giants
Yeah,
come December 15th.
seriously.
I think they are going to take a beating of one of the biggest wins the Ravens had of the season, and that's it's just the Ravens ought to be angry. They know how much they need this game. The Giants are in free fall. They lost a bunch of players. This should be a get right game. If it's not, it's a
Should be a
problem.
butt kicking
Yeah,
is what it should
yeah,
be.
yep,
Yes.
yeah. But yes, you do see the fingerprints of Dean Pease all over the pass rush in particular. And the last game against the Eagles, 21 total pass plays. 20 of those were 4-man rush and 1-5. So it's the
Mm.
most as vanilla as you can get. And yet, when they got pressure against the Eagles, it was oftentimes by rushing somebody from the secondary. So they had some blitzes, and they were zone blitzes where they'd bring somebody off the slot and then drop somebody. I know you know this, Sarah, but I'll just
Yeah.
say
And
this
then
for other
go
people.
for it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then they also drop people from the line of scrimmage to still have 4 rushing, and they're very effective with that. Marlon Humphrey, of course, was part of the sack, and Brandon Stevens rushed off the slot and got a pass defense at a very key moment in the game. So what they did, by maintaining just the minimal numbers, but having deceptive elements was good. I'm questioning now whether they have enough deceptive elements because they've been very successful with the deceptive elements in recent weeks. They're just not using
Mm.
very many at all. Like there's almost
Hmm.
no stunts in their game. They have very few off-ball blitzes, and they do almost no simulated pressure as well. So it was an interesting game for that, and one where it's been now several consecutive weeks where the Ravens, whenever they try to deceive, they're very effective at it, but they just don't do it very often.
Hmm. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't have a good answer
Yeah.
because I look at it and
'Cause
say,
you're
okay,
surprised.
we
Yeah.
could take more of that, if we're giving up 6.5 yards per play on passes where we're just rushing 4 and we're giving up, 4.5 or 3.5 yards when we're adding some sort of deception. I'd be more excited to do more.
Okay, let's flip over to the offensive side. Let's start with the offensive line. Kind of the beginning of the show, the theme I was hitting on was the Ravens' identity and how the Ravens always want to be bullies. And to establish that, you need to establish it usually for the run and then let the pass play off of that. Do you feel like the Ravens have an offensive line to be the bullies that they want to be?
I mean, it's smallish in places, and in particular, the issue is it's very smallish in the A gap with McCary and Linderbaum on that left side, and that is kind of a problem. I mean, one of the issues is that Linderbaum has done well with bigger men next to him, and he has one with Faalele, and that's it. Generally, he can make up for a lot of Faalele's deficiencies, and Faalele brings size to the table. That there are things you can get from Daniel Faalele. Would I rather have been Cleveland? Probably,
Th
but either
that
one of
makes
them
2
would,
of us.
yeah, would bring size. There you go. But on that left side, all options are kind of small, including Voorhees, who has kind of a thin top to bottom frame, and there are still questions about his anchor, despite him being exceptionally strong. He is tall, but he's just not built with tons of sand in the pants and the kind of body that is. Okay, just to put this in the simplest terms, you know how men are often described as apples in terms of where they carry their weight, and sometimes women can be either, but they often are pears because they carry more weight in their hips.
Yeah,
Well,
yep, yep, yep.
pear shape is better for playing guard. You want to have your body
Okay.
a little your weight a little bit lower, and the Ravens just don't really have anybody else on the team other than Cleveland who has that. Well, I mean, Faalele to a certain degree too, but Voorhees does not have it. And so while I would love to see what Voorhees is for 2025, I think McCary is probably the better player for 2024.
Even with all the penalties.
Yeah, he's a very high percentage of his deducted points have been on penalties, which is it's extreme. It was before this last game where he didn't have any penalties and had a bunch of other deductions. He had about 40% of his points were deducted due to penalties, which is by
Oof.
far the highest on the Ravens.
Just get those hands on the inside and,
Let go.
let go. let go. He can do it. He's been around for a while. Okay, so I believe John Harbaugh, even though I'm not happy with it. I believe him when he said that he's not going to make any like starting lineup changes. So do you feel like the offensive line, are you with me? The offensive line is staying the way it is, maybe a couple wrinkles here and there with like a 6 offensive lineman coming in, but I mean, it's set, right?
I would agree. I think that's probably the way it ends up. Now, Harbaugh is famous for the triple switcheroo in 2012, right before the playoffs, where they got Bryant McKinney in. They moved Michael Orr, who'd really been struggling at left tackle, over to right tackle, and moved Kelechi Osemele to left guard. That move, as much as Flacco's ascension through the playoffs, was what won them the Super Bowl. So I wouldn't completely rule it out, but in order for them to do something like that, I think they need to have a Cleveland rotational play leading up to it to make sure that they know what they would do. And I think that's probably a little unlikely.
Yeah, I would also agree. I would also agree with that. Cleveland, we'll see what happens to him this offseason, but I'm sure he can't get out soon enough. Yeah. Okay, let's move to running back. I guess I have 2 questions here. One, what do you think of the lack of usage with Keaton Mitchell thus far? It might just be injury related, but it also might be that they like what they got going on. So what do you think of Keaton Mitchell? And number 2, are there any changes you'd like to see out of, Derrick Henry and what's, sometimes it just seems like things are rolling and then other times it's not. Do you like their usage of him? Or is there anything you would change with usage between those 2 guys, Keaton and Henry, and put Justice in there?
Yeah. So Justice gives them some pass blocking. He's a very willing and active pass blocker. It hasn't always worked out, but in this last game, he had something like 17 total snaps where he had some sort of blocking assignment. One thing that's nice about Justice is if you take him off a chip or set block assignment, and you get a different number from PFF, by the way, because they usually only count set blocks, but I'm counting chips because you don't get the ability to release the same way from a chip block. Well, Justice has been really effective on screen passes, and it's particularly occurred in games where he had much less in the way of set and chip blocking responsibilities. You move to a spot, survey the field, understand where everybody is relative view, then you catch the ball, as opposed to throwing your body into the rib cage of the defender and then trying to make space as best you can. You just got a better chance to play that way. So if anything, I'd say for Justice, reduce his pass blocking snaps, maybe get him on the field a little bit more on second down after Henry runs on first, because Henry seems to be a one run at a time runner most of the time now. Sometimes it's 2, but just most NFL backs don't run the ball 3 or 4 straight times. And then as far as Keaton Mitchell goes, I think the best way to get him in is in a pony backfield. And you had some use of Deontay Johnson that is now probably done with. So we might want to talk about that. But I think
he may have burned his bridges.
Well, I can't say never. I mean, the Ravens always try and do their best to maintain all the optionality for a given player. And I think they've tried to do that with Deontay. But they've taken a very strong measure to have Eric DeCosta come out, suspend him, and say why he was suspended. In the case of Jackson, they took it one level lower, Eddie Jackson, and said he's not traveling with the team for non-injury reasons, and it's not for injury reasons.
Right.
So that leaves it open.
But didn't say what happened exactly. Yeah. Right.
It's still very negative. And then with Marcus Williams,
and then Eddie Jackson was cut. And then Eddie Jackson was cut. There was that. Eddie Jackson's cut. Yeah.
So I don't think they want to cut Deontay Jackson. They've got 3 reasons not to do it. They don't want him to go to another team. They want to maintain the potential value for a pick. Now, he won't generate a pick himself, no way in hell. But if he signs a contract for $3 to $4 million, he could be an offset to somebody they sign.
Yep. Okay, so just to be clear, Keaton Mitchell, what do you want him like 3 or 4 like snaps, like or carries? Like how many attempts would you like to see from him?
I mean, they know more about his health than I do, so I don't want to specify any number. But to the degree they have some gadget plays that Deontay Johnson might have been ideal to run, or that Zay Flowers would be ideal to run. But, let's get Keaton Mitchell in there as a flanker, as a guy who's in the slot and in motion, threatens misdirection or provides misdirection on the run game. There's value you can gain without him even getting his first carry or touch. And then I'd love to see him get a few touches and see what he has. I'm afraid we're going to be a little bit disappointed with exactly where he is in terms of speed, certainly relative to last year.
Yeah, and I mean, you just got to think back to J.K. Dobbins and how long that took.
Yep.
And you just got to remember what these knee injuries do to these guys and how long it often takes to get back. Even Mark Andrews, it's like he's finally coming back alive. Okay, a last thing on offense. What changes, if any, would you like to see from Lamar Jackson?
Continue to distribute the football. I think he's done a good job of getting Wallace involved in the offense to a certain degree. That's been good. I think that he's got more extended play options than he's ever had before. He's been very judicious throwing the ball into the end zone. He leads the NFL in not only touchdowns throwing the ball into the end zone with 18, nobody else has more than 15, but also has 0 interceptions doing it. And so that's fairly remarkable. And he hasn't had a league leading total in terms of total passes there. So I think what we're seeing from Lamar is very efficient there. I think the extended plays have done extremely well. I think you could say more running as another option in the extended plays would be nice. The Ravens could try and break down opposing fronts like the Eagles by letting him leave the pocket. But the problem in this case wasn't the Eagles line. It was Zach Bond, who just nobody could block. It's like he's I don't know what kind of superhero character you can never catch, but Roadrunner maybe or something like that, where, it's just nobody can touch the guy. There's this one Daniel Falele clip, by the way, going around. It was Zach Bond, where he goes into level 2 and misses him by a mile. That was everyone.
I played it on the show. Yeah.
So anyway, hopefully that Jackson will pick it up naturally with a little more running, and the realization of it seemed to be announced in the locker room after the game.
Oh, yeah. No, and Lamar made that very clear. In addition, because Lamar was mostly talking about scrambling, in order to optimize the Lamar and Henry duo, how would you feel about not a lot, but a few more designed runs? Because when you go up against these elite defensive lines, it just seems like it's harder to get Derrick Henry going. Right. And maybe it's just they have to be patient and keep going all the way through the fourth quarter, but you can't do that if you fall too far behind. Do you feel like any more of these, like I was watching Saquon and Jalen Hurts doing some read options and it was working. And I was like, I remember that. Ravens used to do that very effectively. Would you like to see any more of that? That's something that I would like to see, maybe 3 times a game, something like that, just to keep people guessing.
Right. The Lamar Henry mesh point is the most powerful weapon in the entire NFL. There's no other duo who gives the same kind of fear from that. They need to get that more involved in the game. Okay. They absolutely do. And I think all components of misdirection that were present in the Roman era and are still present with Monken, that means counters. It means jet motion, the occasional jet toss to really make people understand that, hey, the ball is going to go there sometime. All elements of misdirection need to be available, including the read option.
Thank you. Okay, we're on the same page. Last question, I'll get you out of here on this. How do we fix Justin Tucker?
I don't know that there's an easy way to do it. And he's, part of the problem is Justin Tucker's 35 and he's had 3 years of decline now. I've been kind of hypothesizing why that might be occurring because his field goals and extra points above expectation have been dropping for 3 consecutive years. It might be a case where it might have been a case where the holder being new in Stout could be the issue. Everybody with the club is saying that's not what it is. They're saying it's Tucker. He needs to fix it. The one problem I think that makes me most believe it could be Tucker is the last kick against the Eagles was perfect. It was end over end rotation. It was directly straight, but it was obviously aimed right. And it was aimed right because he'd been having so many balls tail off to the left again on him. So it's a tough situation to fix. They really, I think he's probably their best option for the playoffs, and I've heard that discussed. And it's funny because a 70% field goal rate, which I think is his rate for the year right now, if you go back 40 years, Rolf Bernerschka, who was a kicker for the Chargers, had a 75% career field goal percentage, and that was the highest in NFL history at the time. And of course, we're complaining about a 70% rate, and it is bad, but it's the NFL has changed a lot, and we expect to demand a lot out of kickers, and Tucker needs to make some kicks.
How are you feeling about this December run? I know I said I would get on the last one. This one, I promised the last question. Giants, Steelers, Texans, Browns. How are you feeling about the December after the bye? You feeling pretty good?
As good as I can. I mean, the win against the Giants, they absolutely must make a statement against the Giants. Get started early on offense, and don't choke the life out of the Giants early. I think that's very important. Then they'll need one more win to almost certainly make the playoffs, and then they could get it in any one of the 3 games. If they win all 3 games, or even if they beat the Steelers and win one other game, they've got still a chance to win the division. So hopefully that's where it works out.
All right, Ken, anything you want to plug? I know obviously everybody can follow you on Twitter at Film Study. You got it at Film Study Ravens. You got it there. I've plugged your show that I just listened to last night at least 3 times. What else you got coming up?
Offensive line scoring out there every week. If you want
Very good.
indications, highly transparent, so you get to see where I made all the deductions and you understand that. So that's what I think a lot of people come to the site for. And Friday Morning GM, I'd highly recommend that. We talk about the Deontay Johnson situation this week.
Okay. All right. Yeah, we may have mentioned it here also, but definitely get the Film Study view of it. Very good. I'm gonna have to listen to that. Ken, thank you so much for taking your time out. I know it was kind of out of your way during your day. Much appreciated. I hope you have a good one.
My pleasure, Sarah. Talk to you later.